Nothing is cheap at all in gold mining. The sluice boxes were around $5,000 each. So it's good to see them being put to use instead of just sitting there getting rusty.
Freddy and Juan just pulled off a strike that could rewrite gold rush history, the richest gold pocket ever recorded. While most crews were scraping for scattered flakes, they hit a concentrated deposit so massive it's sending shockwaves through the mining world. Experts are already calling it a once-in-a-generation haul, a find that could eclipse every modern record in Montana and beyond. The gold isn't just abundant, it's enormous. Nuggets the size of fists, veins running deep into layers untouched for over a century, and are so dense it's forcing the team to rethink every extraction strategy. Freddy and Juan combined old-school mining instincts with modern technology, using precision scans and custom rigs to chase a deposit others would have assumed impossible. The impact isn't just financial. Rival crews are scrambling, local communities are buzzing, and the numbers alone are jaw-dropping. Every scoop, every pan is adding up to a total that could make this the most lucrative gold rush season in recent memory. Don't miss a single moment. Hit like and subscribe to follow Freddy and Juan as they pull the richest gold pocket in history straight from the earth. Cold mist rolls across a forgotten stretch of Colorado wilderness, where rusted mine shafts and collapsed timbers mark the remains of an operation long abandoned. Locals call it Devil's Spine, a name born from tragedy. 3 miners went down in 1937 and were never seen again. Most consider it cursed land, but for Freddy Dodge and Juan Ibarra, curses are just another challenge waiting to be disproved. Their new survey drones sweep the ridge, capturing seismic data from deep beneath the granite. The readings come back erratic, a massive hollow chamber hidden under layers of fractured stone. Every geologist who ever mapped the area dismissed it as sensor noise. But Freddy's eyes linger on one faint, golden signature pulsing in the data. He's seen that pattern once before, back when a prospector told him about the gold that breathes. He can't shake the memory. Something about this land feels alive. Juan, cautious as ever, studies the reports with a frown. This ground's unstable, he warns. It's like digging through glass that's ready to shatter. Freddy doesn't flinch. He simply says, "That's where gold likes to hide." And with that, the decision is made. Under a thick morning fog, their excavator roars to life, biting into earth untouched for nearly a century. None of them realize they're standing above something older, something that never wanted to be found. Days later, the first core samples return, and what the crew sees stops everyone cold. Tiny flecks of gold are embedded inside limestone, a geological impossibility. Gold doesn't form there. It shouldn't exist there. Juan runs the assay 3 times, but every test comes back the same. Pure gold, locked in stone that's not supposed to hold it. Freddy leans over the microscope and whispers, "We're sitting on something the textbooks missed." Word spreads fast. Nearby prospectors talk about a 1911 expedition that struck a living vein, one that refilled itself overnight after being mined. The story sounds insane, yet the deeper Freddy and Juan go, the stronger their readings become. Seismic sensors start to throb with a rhythmic pattern, a pulse buried miles underground. The data looks less like static and more like a heartbeat. The excitement builds with every bucket of soil pulled from the ground. Juan begins modifying their machinery on the fly, sketching designs across the tailgate of a pickup. He constructs a dual drill rig capable of cutting through alternating rock types, something no one's ever tried at this scale. The system runs hot, the hydraulic pumps groaning under pressure, hoses bursting in the night like veins under strain. Tremors ripple through the pit every 20 minutes, each one slightly stronger than the last. But Freddy won't stop. He's convinced they're inches away from history. His focus borders on obsession. He barely sleeps, pacing the pit long after the floodlights shut off. Juan watches him from the catwalk, muttering, "He's chasing ghosts." Yet when they finally run the slurry through the sluice, the water turns a pale gold. Not yellow, not brown, but the color of wealth itself. Juan dips his hand in, and when he lifts it, his palm glitters with microscopic flakes. "I've never seen gold run like that," he says quietly. Rumors spread through the nearby camps, stories of a new kind of gold, a vein so pure it corrodes steel and bends sensors. Some call it the vein that eats metal. Others whisper that the ground itself is resisting. Freddy ignores it all, eyes glued to the monitor where that golden pulse beats steadily. Deep down, he knows they're no longer chasing ordinary gold. They're chasing something the Earth has been holding for centuries. Then the pulse became more than a reading. The air trembled with it. The first vibration rolled through the pit, subtle, almost polite, like the ground exhaling after centuries of silence. Diesel generators rattled on their mounts, coffee mugs slid across tables, and a low, rhythmic rumble began to pulse underfoot, steady, deliberate, as if the earth itself had drawn in a breath and was now testing the intruders. The monitors in the control tent began to flash. Heat spikes, metallic fluxes, unstable readings showing something massive shifting far below. Juan leaned over the data screen, jaw tightening as the values climbed past safe limits. "That's not seismic," he muttered. "It's reactive." Freddy didn't answer. He was staring down into the dark shaft, where the drill casing quivered as though something deep in the earth was alive and moving. Then came the glow. Small fissures in the mud pit began to pulse faintly gold, just at the edges, too dim to be reflected light, too alive to be a trick of vision. It shimmered beneath the water, like veins of liquid metal breathing under the soil. Juan shouted for a shutdown, and Freddy, voice tight, ordered the engines killed. The roar faded into silence, leaving only the faint hiss of cooling pipes and the impossible golden gleam crawling slowly across the ground. Crew members gathered near the pit, whispering. Someone swore the rock was humming, a low, hollow tone that seemed to vibrate through their boots. Freddy crouched, touched the wet dirt, and felt it, a faint, pulsing vibration like a heartbeat coming from below. He said nothing, just stood and backed away. "Let it settle," he ordered quietly. They shut everything down and walked out under a starless sky, leaving the pit to its eerie light. By dawn, the glow had faded, replaced by a strange metallic scent that hung heavy in the air. Freddy and Juan were back before the sun broke the horizon, eyes bleary but alert. The new drill rig sat waiting, its bit gleaming with condensation. Freddy's voice was hoarse. "We go in again." Juan didn't argue, just adjusted the settings and brought the engines roaring back to life. At 10:14 a.m., the main drill punched through something hollow. There was a sharp hiss, not the dry crack of stone, but a wet, heavy release of air that had been trapped for ages. The pressure shift knocked two workers off balance. Steam rose from the borehole, thick with the stench of sulfur. Freddy ordered the drill stopped, and Juan lowered a camera probe into the cavity. The screen flickered, then steadied, and the image it revealed made everyone fall silent. The chamber below glittered like another world. The camera panned across walls of quartz, laced with thick, crystalline gold, twisted veins gleaming in the light like arteries running through translucent flesh. The walls shimmered, moving slightly as though something inside them was alive. The floor wasn't rock. It rippled faintly with layers of fine, dusted flakes like golden ash drifting in a current. Juan exhaled. "This isn't just a pocket," he whispered. "It's a vault." They lowered more lights and mapped what they could, but the chamber stretched beyond the lens range, an enormous cavity beneath the ridge, older and deeper than any mine recorded in the region. Freddy named it the Spine Chamber, and even the skeptics nodded. It looked less like geology and more like anatomy, a buried heart of gold beating quietly in the dark. The crew worked through the night to stabilize the opening. Once the structural supports were secure, they began the first controlled extraction. At first, everything went according to plan. Then, the sluices began to choke. The flow wasn't gravel or mud, but thick, golden sediment pouring like molten syrup, flooding the mats faster than they could clear them. The entire rig vibrated under the pressure. Freddy barked orders, trying to divert the flow, but the sluice boxes overflowed with shimmering slurry. The crew went to work barehanded, scooping, straining, shoveling anything that glittered. Their gloves tore, their sleeves stuck with gold dust so fine it clung to sweat like glittering pollen. Within 3 days, their haul exceeded everything they'd mined the entire previous season. The cleanup trays glowed under the floodlights, nuggets forming in strange, angular shapes, as though the gold had grown, not formed. But something was wrong. The equipment began failing one piece at a time. Hydraulic seals split, bolts rusted overnight, and even brand new hoses developed a fine corrosion, eaten from within. Juan checked chemical levels in the wash water. Nothing explained it. There was no salt, no acid, nothing reactive enough to cause that kind of decay. Yet, every piece of steel that touched material from the spine chamber seemed to weaken. Then came the magnetometer readings. While scanning the chamber for mapping data, Juan noticed the device pulsing out of rhythm. The magnetic interference was chaotic, stronger the closer he moved to the gold seam. He called Freddy over, holding up the screen. "Look at this. It's not magnetic metal, but it's acting like it is." The readings spiked. Then the device died, screen blank. Freddy's face was unreadable. "It's not just metal," he said quietly. "It's something else." They replaced the instruments, but none lasted more than a few minutes near the deposit. Even the radios crackled with static when pointed toward the pit. Every sound in the camp, the generators, the drills, even the crew's voices, felt muted, as if the air itself was heavier near the chamber. Still, the gold kept coming. Buckets of material shimmered under the lamps, so rich in concentration that the slurry sparkled even after the water settled. Juan watched it, silent, then turned to Freddy. "You realize we can't measure this the usual way. This isn't just geology anymore." Freddy nodded but said nothing. He only stared into the dark shaft, where faint glimmers still pulsed deep below. No one slept that night. The wind moved strangely through scaffolds and empty fuel drums. Beneath the camp, the ground hummed, a low, steady rhythm that had everyone on edge. Freddy adjusted his helmet light and stepped closer to the pit, listening. The vibration wasn't just a signal, it was a warning. Minutes later, the warning became reality. A section of the tunnel gave way without notice, sending dust and rock raining down. A loader toppled into the debris, its cab crushed beneath tons of shattered stone. Shouts erupted as the crew scrambled, hearts pounding, hands bleeding on jagged edges. Freddy's eyes locked on the newly exposed rock face. Fresh veins of gold glittered across the shattered stone, alive and unweathered, threaded like lightning, the earth itself revealing its hidden treasure. Juan knelt near the loader, brushing dust from a golden seam. "I can't explain it," he admitted, voice trembling. "The deposit's alive in some way." Freddy didn't answer immediately. Instead, he helped rig supports and coordinated the extraction, each movement precise, despite the trembling ground. Hours passed in a blur of sweat, mud, and rock dust, but eventually the loader was freed. From the collapse zone alone, the crew managed to recover over 1,000 ounces of gold, the largest single haul any of them had ever seen. Freddy held a piece in his hand, turning it slowly. "It's feeding us," he murmured. "It's keeping us here." Word traveled faster than they could anticipate. By the next morning, rival mining teams and investors were circling the ridge, whispering, scheming, and broadcasting the rumor that Freddy and Juan had struck something unprecedented. Anonymous drones hovered silently over the camp at night, capturing footage of rigs, trucks, and glittering sluice lines. Freddy responded by posting armed guards, tense patrols crisscrossing the perimeter. Then a former claim owner stepped forward, presenting a stack of old legal papers, insisting the mineral rights had never been legally relinquished. Juan froze when he saw them. "We can't keep digging until this is sorted," he said, cautious, reasoning with the weight of legality. Freddy shook his head, determination burning in his eyes. "We drain the vein before anyone stops us. No delays." Tension began to fray their partnership. Once unbreakable trust wavered with every decision, every heated argument over the speed and scope of extraction. The excitement of discovery mixed dangerously with greed, turning whispered suggestions into clashes. Freddy wanted risk. Juan wanted caution. Nights were spent monitoring tremors, sluice levels, and the shifting walls of the spine chamber, all while keeping watch for prying eyes from the ridge above. The discovery had caught the attention of scientific institutes worldwide. Geological teams contacted Freddy and Juan, offering to study the anomaly under strict non-disclosure agreements. Equipment and sensors were shipped in, calibrated, and inserted into the pit. When data finally returned, it defied all known scientific principles. The density readings of the gold veins were 12 times higher than Earth's crust average. Nothing in the historical or modern record matched the formation, and even seasoned geologists called it unprecedented. Before the team could digest the results, fragments of the data were leaked online, sparking wild speculation among amateur prospectors and conspiracy theorists alike. Then a government geologist appeared quietly at the camp, eyes scanning the pit and rigs with a mixture of curiosity and unease. He warned Freddy to cease operations immediately, citing safety concerns without elaboration. The message was clear. Someone higher up was aware of the anomaly and wanted it contained. Rumors began to swirl. Extraterrestrial origin, hidden military deposits, or even pre-industrial smelting chambers buried during forgotten conflicts. Every suggestion seemed more outrageous than the last, yet none could fully explain the readings, the glowing veins, or the seismic pulse that echoed faintly through the ground beneath the camp. Freddy faced the camera crew that evening, the cold wind sweeping across the ridge, dusted with faint golden shimmer from the sluice overflow. "Whatever it is," he said, voice steady and resolute, "it's ours." We found it fair and square around him. The camp hummed with activity, generators, drills, and murmurs from the crew preparing for the next phase of extraction. Juan, standing a few steps behind, watched the pulse of the pit below, conflicted but unwilling to leave. The gold wasn't just a resource. It had become a living, breathing force in the earth, demanding attention, respect, and unrelenting courage. As night fell again, the ground beneath the ridge shivered faintly, sending vibrations up through the platforms and the tents. Lights in the pit flickered as if the deposit itself were responding to their presence. Every instrument near the spine chamber quivered and failed intermittently, hinting at some strange electromagnetic influence. The crew moved with precision, anticipation crackling through the air. Every bucket lifted, every sluice cleared, every nugget counted, felt like dancing on the edge of something far greater than the mine itself. The collapse had proven both danger and miracle. Danger in the violent reminder of how fragile the chamber was, miracle in revealing gold that seemed to multiply as soon as it was uncovered. Freddy and Juan worked side by side again, temporarily united by the shared awe and urgency. Every pulse, every shimmer, every anomaly screamed that the story of the spine chamber was far from over. The gold called to them, feeding, testing, challenging, and the world beyond the ridge had only begun to hear whispers of what they had unearthed. Even as disputes, drones, and government agents circled, the vein below throbbed like a heart. Freddy adjusted the rig, checked gauges, and glanced at Juan. No words were exchanged. They both knew the next extraction could be bigger than anything the gold rush era had ever seen. Every ounce pulled from the chamber would be measured not just in weight, but in legend. The stakes had grown higher than they could have imagined, and the ridge of Devil's Spine had already proven that it would not give its secrets lightly. The team continued digging into the golden veins, muscles aching, instruments failing, adrenaline pulsing in sync with the chamber itself. Buckets overflowed, sluice mats choked, and golden slurry spilled into every corner, coating hands in fine metallic dust that sparkled in the floodlights. The spine chamber was no ordinary deposit. It had become a force, almost alive, testing engineering, courage, and human greed simultaneously. And beneath it all, the hum persisted, growing stronger, a subtle warning that something waited deeper still. Freddy and Juan knew this was more than gold. They were chasing a secret the ridge had kept for decades, maybe centuries. Every vibration, every shimmer of metal in the floodlights hinted at what lay ahead. Against that rising pulse, the team descended once more, determined to reach the central deposit before winter sealed the ridge. The new drill head tore into fractured granite, groaning against pressure far beyond its rating until it struck something solid. Sparks flew, sensors pinged wildly, and Freddy leaned closer, eyes narrowing at the camera feed. A dense plate-like structure lay embedded deep in quartz, flat and unnatural. Juan studied it carefully, insisting, "It's geological, some kind of natural intrusion." Freddy shook his head, a tight grin forming. "No, that's man-made. Someone buried something down here decades ago, maybe centuries. With meticulous precision, the crew slowly breached the barrier. Seconds stretched into an eternity. Then the last layer gave way. A surge of golden slurry erupted from the cavity like a molten river, spraying the rig and floodlights in a blaze of color that made the night look like dawn. Cameras whirred to capture every angle, the feed shaking as men ducked, shielded themselves, and scrambled to control the flow. Buckets and sluices could barely handle it. Even the reinforced mats bent under the sheer weight. The detectors went wild, maxing out repeatedly. The readings were incomprehensible, the richest gold concentration ever measured by any gold rush team, a phenomenon outside all prior records, a vein beyond anything science had catalogued. The extraction went on for hours, every scoop, every haul revealing nuggets larger and purer than anything they had ever imagined. The golden slurry rippled across the pit like liquid sunlight. Workers moved with urgency, hands glinting, muscles straining against the weight of both treasure and anticipation. The ground beneath occasionally quivered, almost as if acknowledging the removal, testing the courage of those daring to strip the vein of its bounty. Freddy and Juan coordinated every movement, timing each sluice dump and each bucket haul, as the central chamber revealed layer upon layer of pristine gold that seemed endless, like a river that never ran dry. But the ridge would not let them keep it unchallenged. Midway through the final haul, the ground trembled violently. The supports creaked and snapped, and tons of overlying stone gave way in a catastrophic collapse. Dust and rock filled the air, obscuring vision and choking the crew. Shouts echoed through the chamber, hearts raced, and instinct took over. They scrambled to save what they could, dragging sluice boxes, salvaging golden slurry from under rubble. When the dust settled, they had recovered 3,182 ounces, appraised at over $8.4 million, not counting sections lost in the collapse, vanished forever into the earth. Every ounce seemed to carry the weight of history, a treasure beyond measure. Government and geological authorities arrived afterward, puzzled and cautious. Official reports described the phenomenon as a temporary geological event, but no one who had witnessed it truly believed that. Instruments were calibrated and recalibrated, yet the formation defied all expectations: density, distribution, purity, all exceptional, all beyond conventional explanation. Juan, weary and disillusioned, finally packed his gear and left for Nevada, murmuring, "Some gold was never meant to stay above ground." Freddy remained, surveying the sealed pit, the collapsed chamber now invisible beneath rubble and earth. He hammered a single iron stake into the ridge at the precise center of the collapse. "For the day it calls again," he whispered, his shadow stretching long across the frost-bitten ground. Months later, drone footage of the ridge revealed new fissures, glowing faintly gold where the chamber had once lain, subtle yet unmistakable against the grey rock. Locals whispered that storms always passed directly over the ridge, lightning drawn inexplicably to the buried vein. Tales grew, Freddy returning at night, standing vigil over the iron stake, listening for the hum that no one else could hear. Even seismic logs, unofficial and unverified, showed rhythmic pulses beneath the ridge every 72 hours, like the heartbeat of the vein itself. The ridge had been quiet for centuries, indifferent to prospectors, skeptics, and thieves, but Freddy and Juan had stirred it awake. The gold wasn't merely a treasure to be counted in ounces or appraised in dollars. It was alive in its own rhythm, a force tethered to the land, responding to those who dared to disturb it. Each shimmer in the fissures, each pulse beneath the ground, carried a warning and a promise, a reminder that some treasures are more than material. They are sentient, elusive, and eternal. Freddy stared down at the stake one last time before retreating to the cabin. The wind carried faint metallic whispers, and the faint golden glow under the ridge shimmered like a secret breathing in the dark. Every instrument still malfunctioned near the pit. Every sensor refused to register the anomaly, and yet every pulse could be felt underfoot by anyone brave enough to stand there. The legend of Devil's Spine was no longer a story told by old prospectors. It had become a reality forged in gold, danger, and impossible discovery. The ridge remained as it always had, patient, ancient, alive. Freddy knew the gold would sleep only until the next intruder, the next dig, the next heartbeat awoke it, and beneath the frost, the rubble, and the skeletal remains of centuries, the spine chamber still pulsed, humming a rhythm that no one but the daring few could ever hope to follow. The vein was no longer hidden. It had been awakened. It had been conquered and escaped all at once. And somewhere in the deep dark below, it waited, radiant and alive, for the next chapter.